Hi, I'm Sharon Winsmith, tax attorney, active investor, and your go-to resource for proven investment and tax planning strategies. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the truth when it comes to estate planning. I'm going to tell you a few myths that are commonly told by estate planners in practice and how you should think about what to do when you are looking at how you should set up your estate. So in this video, what I'm talking about is estate tax. So that's the tax that applies when you die. So there is, some countries call it an inheritance tax. In the US, we basically refer to this as an estate tax. There is an estate tax exclusion. However, while that amount, while I'm recording this video, is quite high, it will go down and it's set to go down in a few years. So if you're someone who is looking to build wealth over time, you most likely will have an estate tax problem. So it's better to think about, estate tax when you're younger in life. Even if right now you would die and not have to pay estate tax, you may find yourself, because of law changes or just because of the beauty of compounding, in a situation in the future where you are paying a massive amount of tax on your estate when that estate gets passed down to your heirs. So I'm not going to dive into estate tax planning strategies in this video. I don't want anyone to think that that's the purpose of this video. I'm going to talk to you about some concepts, some best practices. I'm not going to talk about estate planning strategies here. I will have future videos on my channel in the future that do go into estate tax planning strategies, ways that you can set up your estate and reduce the estate tax or eliminate estate tax that you'll pay. So subscribe to my channel so that you make sure you find those videos when I do release them. I want to be clear too from the start that I do not offer estate tax planning services, so I have no incentive to tell you to do one thing or the other. I am merely here to try to point out issues I see in the industry and show you a non-biased view of how I think about estate tax. So I want to start with explaining why there have been these huge shifts in how we think about estate tax. So a lot of people, and when I say people, I'm talking about, estate and trust attorneys, they are really still operating under the old approach to estate tax and estate planning. There has been a huge change over the past few years. So there's a number of different reasons why that's the case. We have newer generations that are stepping in and inheriting the wealth. And I think there's just kind of fundamental changes in the way people view life and view work and view careers and view, how they want their lives to be. So under the old approach, and this is, again, this is the approach that most estate and trust attorneys, or pretty much all of them that I see in practice, they're really assuming that you're still under the old approach and that that's what applies. But the old approach is really you just leave money to your kids when you die. So that's the way, traditional estate planning is set up. If you go to an estate planning attorney, they're probably just going to operate under the assumption that, you want to just pass down your estate when you die, and you want to avoid the tax that would be, would apply to that estate, so that your heirs, I'm going to assume children, but it can be whoever you want to inherit your estate, so that your children will get as much money as possible. They don't want to be giving, another chunk to Uncle Sam. They want to give as much of their wealth as possible to their kids. So that's the old approach. The new approach, and this comes from years of working with clients, years of studying the industry, just my own personal views as well as the views of my friends. But this comes from me working with uber wealthy clients over the past few years. There is a big shift in how they view their, passing down their wealth to their kids. The new approach, and the new approach that people want these days, is they want to shift money to their children earlier in life. So let's talk about why the old approach is bad, or why it's outdated, and why the new approach is the new way of thinking when it comes to passing down wealth to your children. So under the old approach, you can think about the typical fact pattern. Let's say you have Bob and Sally who have, $20 million. And they are, they've lived past the estate tax changes, so they're going to pay a significant amount of estate tax on their wealth when that wealth is passed down to their children. So let's say Bob dies when he's 90, and so all of his estate is going to go to his wife, Sally. Sally then outlives Bob a few more years, and let's say she dies when she's 95. At that point, when Sally dies at 95 years old, that is when her kids would inherit everything. The problem with that is her kids are getting all that money when they're in their 70s. So they're too old to really do anything with it at that point. They probably would have much rather had, maybe they don't need the full 20 million. Maybe they would have been happy to take a lesser amount, but at an earlier point in their lives. So the reason that the old approach is so bad is that people are living a lot longer. So that means that they're dying when their kids are a lot older. And, when you're in your 70s or even 60s, there's a lot less that you can do or want to do with that money at that point. Wouldn't you rather have it when you're earlier in life, 30s, 40s, 50s, where you yourself can make investments, you yourself can go travel and do things that you wouldn't be able to afford to do? Those types of reasons make it clear why you don't want to wait until, people are a lot older to inherit the wealth. Also, people are making more money earlier in life. So because of that, free access to education and just resources that show you how to build wealth sooner in life, and just because of changes in the dynamics of the way people work and think about careers, there are a lot of people who are making a lot more money earlier in life. Whereas really back in the old days, if you think about your wealthy friends' parents who have a, significant amount of wealth, they probably worked W-2 jobs, saved their money, and were very frugal, and, just over compounding over time, built up that wealth. But now what's happening is people are really making significant amounts of wealth in their 20s, 30s, 40s. So they're making more money earlier in life, and they have more ability to pass it down sooner. Also, because of compounding, because of, and various different factors, because of good access to, education around investing, people are just dying with higher net worths. I mean, that's just a factor of inflation in and of itself, but it's also a factor of the fact that people are investing and making money just at a significantly higher rate than the IRS's inflation indexes for, estate planning exemptions apply. So people are dying with significantly higher net worth. That's just the way things are. So, that's even more you have to do estate planning with, and it's even more that you could have passed down sooner. Also, there's this huge change in trend because of various different reasons, but people want financial freedom earlier in life. People don't want to work, 100 hours a week until they're 65 years old, have, a jerk that's a boss or several bosses that you have to report to the rest of your life. People want to be financially free earlier in life. They want to be able to make their own decisions. They want to be able to travel when they're in their 30s. They don't want to have to wait till they're 65 when they can barely, get out of the shower. So people want financial freedom earlier in life, and by passing down your wealth sooner rather than waiting till your kids are 70 or whatever, then you can allow them or help them achieve financial freedom much earlier. So that leads us to the new approach. So I think, when you think about the old approach and when we talk about why it's outdated, you can easily see why you want to shift money to your children earlier in life. This allows your children to use the money more when they're younger. So, they can buy a business, they can travel more, they can just do more with their lives when they're younger and more vibrant, even before they have kids or when their kids are younger. We always joked, I have a sister and a brother, and I'm the youngest. And we always joke about the vacations I got to go on as opposed to my brother, who was significantly older than me, are drastically different. And it's just because my parents had significantly, different amounts of money that they were making when I was being raised as opposed to my brother. So this allows your kids to go on vacation. Parents to take their kids on vacation a lot sooner in life, and it just gives them more money to work with. It also gets more money and a significant amount of appreciation outside of your estate. So let's say you have $100,000, when you're in your 40s. Think about when you invest that $100,000, how much that $100,000 is going to be worth when you're 80, when you're 90, because of compounding. That's going to be a significantly higher number if you're investing that properly. So instead of getting that massive number, when you're 80 or 90, whatever that's turned into out of your estate, you can just get the $100,000 out earlier in life in a way that's much simpler. And that's a significant amount of value you've removed from your estate. So when you're thinking about doing estate planning sooner in life, you want to make sure you're thinking about not only getting out that money today, but the future value of that money. So that's another reason why it's good to go ahead and get it out earlier in your life and earlier in your children's life than waiting till you've, all that compounding has happened within your estate. We talked about financial freedom. This helps your children achieve financial freedom earlier in life. It's easy to see that. And you can also use methods if you do estate planning now and don't wait till you're 100 years old and you die. You can do methods that are much cheaper. You don't have to use those expensive estate planning tools in a lot of cases, and those restrictive trust. I hate trust. I'll talk more about that in the next slide. So you can do gifting now in a way that, you're doing it very cost efficiently, let alone, efficiently from just getting the value outside of your estate. So it's important to think about the methods available to you and how easy it is to do estate planning now, as opposed to waiting and getting 100% of your wealth outside of your estate when you're much older. So now that we know why the kind of concepts around estate planning have changed, and it's really just a function of what do people want, and what people want and what their kids want has changed drastically. And the estate planning industry has not cut out with that. They haven't kept up with that change. They haven't, really done anything to change the methods or the tools that estate planning attorneys recommend. And a lot of that, honestly, is because it doesn't behoove them to do that. They make a lot more money under the old approach because it requires you to set up trust. It requires you to do very expensive methods. That the person who benefits the most from that is really your estate planning attorney. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some best practices. I'm not going to dive into estate planning strategies in this video. Again, subscribe to the channel because we'll touch on some of those in the future. But just a few best practices to think about when you're thinking about estate planning. So number one, never, ever, ever ask an estate planning attorney what you should do. If you ask a barber if you need a haircut, they're going to say yes. If you ask a surgeon if you need surgery, they're going to say yes. You need to understand, do the research yourself, decide what is best for you, and then go to the estate planning attorney, if you need one, to set up whatever you want. So an estate planning attorney is always going to recommend more complicated, costly structures, whether those are trusts, the types of trust, whatever. They're going to tell you, if you go to an estate planning attorney and you say, do I need a trust? They are financially incentivized to tell you yes, because there's a joke in practice. I say a lot in my videos that the only person who really benefits from setting up a trust is the estate planning attorney that set it up. So, I don't like trust. It's no secret. I want to avoid those at all costs, but do not ever ask your estate planning attorney what you should do. They're going to recommend most likely the most costly structure that will give them the highest fees. You also want to do estate planning as soon as possible. So I kind of touched on this on the first slide, but don't wait until you're older. Don't wait until you're, have a ton of money. Do it now. If you're in your 20s is probably a little soon, but if you're in your 30s, 40s, and you've got a net worth of several million, that's probably not going anywhere. So, you want to start doing it as soon as possible because it's cheaper to do it sooner. You can remove more value from your estate. And as I mentioned, what's very, very important with estate planning is getting that future appreciation outside your estate as soon as possible. So you might think today, I don't have, $20, $30 million estate, but if you're in your 30s, 40s, even 50s, and, you've got several million, you could easily see how it would turn into that when you get to an age where, God forbid, you start to think about could be likely times that you would be passing down your estate. So don't wait. That's the biggest mistake. I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is waiting too long. Only use trust as an absolute last resort. So I am not a fan of trust. I've said that a million times in this video. I'm not a fan of them. I think it's very rare that you actually ever need a trust. And the worst type of trust are irrevocable trusts. So a lot of estate planning attorneys recommend irrevocable trusts because they're more costly to set up, they're more difficult, and they, for various reasons, usually result in a lot more fees and financial benefit to the estate planning attorney. I avoid an irrevocable trust at all costs, and I avoid any trust for most cases. There will be people who need trust. So if you are someone who, has $100 million estate and you are hell-bent on leaving 100% of that to your children or to your heirs and your children's children, then you're going to need trust. But what I have found in practice is that people that are uber wealthy, and I'm talking, 30, 40, 50 million, they don't want their kids to inherit just this massive sum of money. We've seen plenty of examples of why just passing, tons of money to kids will result in some sort of issue. Some generation will end up doing something stupid and losing it all, or just they won't be productive and they'll be lazy, whatever. So in my experience working with uber wealthy clients, they don't want to leave just a ton of money. I mean, my kids are not going to inherit 100% of my estate because I don't think that's just not what I want for them. I don't think it's good for them. I don't think it's good for their children in the future to just get this, a ton of money handed to them without working for it. So unless you're someone who's uber wealthy and just hell-bent on leaving all of your money to your children without, doing other things like charitable givings or anything like that, then I would avoid trust at all costs. And I would always try to avoid irrevocable trust. The only time an irrevocable trust might be a good idea is with ILIT. So that's insurance related trust that you set up sometimes when you are going to put an insurance policy inside of that trust. You sometimes do that with an ILIT. There are variations of that strategy that I like, but otherwise, irrevocable trust, just don't even talk to me about them. I'm not a fan of them, and they're kind of outdated, I think for the most part. The one thing I will mention is revocable living trust. So most people watching this video probably have one and may need one. And this is really a strategy to avoid probation, like avoid having to probate the estate. So it saves probate fees. This is not a tax planning tool. Revocable living trusts do not provide asset protection, and they do not provide any tax benefit whatsoever. They only reduce probate fees when you die. So I'll link to my video below on a revocable living trust. There's also a lot of kind of misconceptions about that. Everybody does not need a revocable living trust. Only a few people do. Check out my video if you think it might be relevant to see if you might need one, and how to think about talking to your estate planning attorney when setting that up. Because again, if you go to an estate planning attorney and say, do I need a revocable living trust? They're going to say yes. People like Susie Orman try to tell you everybody needs one. That is not true. The vast majority of the population doesn't need one, but you're probably very smart, savvy, sophisticated if you're watching this video, so it's quite likely you might. But, with that said, that's a separate trust. That's not an estate planning tool. That's a probate tool, and it can provide some privacy for your estate. People talk a lot about trust. Revocable living trusts don't provide asset protection videos, but some trusts do. For example, a lot of irrevocable trusts will provide asset protection. I think there's better ways to protect your assets. There's a lot of asset protection strategies out there, and I don't think irrevocable trusts are really needed in that case. And I think that that's a strategy that a lot of people who sell irrevocable trusts tell you in order to get you to buy them. So with that said, with very limited exceptions, I try to avoid trust at all costs. So this was just a good overview of how to think about estate planning conceptually. In the future, we're going to talk a bit more about, specific estate planning strategies that I do like. So I've kind of told you what I don't like and why I don't like them, but we're going to talk more about what I do like. So if you're interested, if you found this video helpful, if you think it's going to be relevant, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you see those videos in the future.